Hello and welcome. Today we're diving into an idea that seems to clash with 2,000 years of Christian doctrine, reincarnation. And we're not looking at this from an Eastern perspective. We're going to explore it through words that our source attributes directly to Jesus Christ himself. So is it possible that a core belief was simply lost to time? Let's find out.
Reincarnation in the Bible? I know, for most people that sounds impossible. The official doctrine is crystal clear. One life, one judgment. But our source material points us to a very specific passage, a pivotal conversation that, if you read it a certain way, could turn everything we thought we knew completely upside down.
Now, here's the radical premise from our source. The idea of reincarnation wasn't some foreign concept. It was actually an accepted belief among the very first Christians. It claims this doctrine was deliberately removed much later, during the Great Councils that basically defined the official rules of the Church.
But where did this idea even come from? Well, it didn't just appear out of thin air. To really grasp what Jesus was about to reveal, we have to look at the Jewish mysticism of that time. You see, in traditions like Kabbalah, the concept of souls returning, known as Gilgul, was already being explored. This is the world, the context, in which our story unfolds.
And within that world, we find a critical prophecy from the Old Testament. It was a condition, something that had to happen before the Messiah could arrive. And this wasn't just any old event. It was about the literal return of a legendary figure, the prophet Elijah.
Look at the exact words from Malachi on the screen. Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and awesome day of the Lord. This isn't some vague metaphor. For the people of that era, this was a literal promise. Elijah had to come back. He was the missing puzzle piece everyone was waiting for.
Okay, let's fast forward to the New Testament. We're heading to Mount Tabor. During the Transfiguration, this is where that ancient prophecy is about to collide head-on with reality in one of the most mystical events in the Gospels.
So Jesus takes his inner circle, Peter, James, and John, up to the top of a high mountain, far away from everyone else. The stage is being set for a revelation that's about to completely change their understanding of everything.
And then it happens. The Transfiguration. Jesus' appearance completely changes. His face starts shining like the sun. It's this divine manifestation, a moment that just shatters the boundaries of physical reality.
And here comes the key moment. Standing right there with Jesus are two giants of the Old Testament, Moses and Elijah, the very same Elijah from the prophecy. He's there, on the mountain, talking with Jesus. You can only imagine the shock for the disciples. The prophecy is happening right before their very eyes.
Now, this whole event leaves the disciples totally amazed, but also really confused. They just saw Elijah, but what does it all mean? It doesn't quite line up with what the scribes and teachers have been saying. So as they're coming down the mountain, they work up the courage to ask the million-dollar question.
Their question is direct. Teacher, why does everyone say that Elijah has to come first? They just saw him, but not in the way they expected. They need an answer. And the answer Jesus gives them is the absolute heart of this entire story.
Jesus' response is frankly stunning. First, he confirms the prophecy is true, but then he drops a bombshell. He tells them Elijah has already come and they did not recognize him, but did to him whatever they wished. So not only has he already been here, but he was rejected and mistreated.
In that one instant, the disciples connect the dots. The source material highlights this moment. They finally understood that Jesus wasn't speaking in riddles. He was referring to a real person, someone who was also rejected and mistreated, John the Baptist.
The connection is so explicit. On the left, you have the prophecy, Elijah must return. On the right, you have Jesus' revelation, John the Baptist was Elijah. According to our source, there's no room for ambiguity here. This is the clearest statement of one soul, Elijah's, returning in a new body, John's, to fulfill a divine purpose.
So, accepting that John was Elijah really opens the door to a much bigger question. Why? What is the purpose of a soul coming back? And the source offers a vision of reincarnation not as some kind of punishment, but as a journey, a path.
We're not talking about an endless karmic wheel here. In this view, reincarnation is a process with a clear goal, to allow the soul to purify itself and to mature. Each life is a new lesson, another chance to get closer to perfection.
And you can actually visualize that journey in 4 distinct stages. First, purification, cleansing past mistakes. Then, maturation, which is the growth of the spirit. This leads to an awakening, a higher level of consciousness, and the final destination, the divine return, being reunited with the source of everything.
So, to wrap it all up, the central argument of our source is this. By identifying John the Baptist as the reincarnation of Elijah, Jesus wasn't just fulfilling an ancient prophecy. According to this interpretation, he was validating an entire system of spiritual evolution, the journey of the soul through multiple lives.
And that leaves us with one final unsettling question. If, as our source suggests, an idea this central could be set aside and forgotten, what other original teachings were lost in the fog of history? What other parts of the original message might just be waiting to be rediscovered? The question is wide open.